All right, it's time to talk about Malik Willis. The fourth-year quarterback out of Liberty is one of the most tantalizing prospects in this year's draft class. Today, I'm joined by Ian Wharton. You might know him better as NFL Film Study on Twitter. Ian, if I could give you one word to describe Malik Willis, what would it be?
I'd say dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, I would completely agree. So one of the things I think when it comes with you saying dynamic, the offensive line play was pretty poor this past year. If you just were someone who looked just at numbers and stats, there were some things that kind of trickled down. Where do you, like in terms of evaluating him at the next level, how much of that do you take into account?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he was put into a situation where at the NFL level, for the most part, he's not going to see that. The Bengals, Dolphins, like those two teams are historically just terrible pass blocking teams. Unless if he goes into a situation like that, right? Like it's hard to project him into such a disadvantageous position, right? So disadvantageous. Like it's going to be hard for him to have to deal with the same set of problems that he had at Liberty. And so I think like where I take that into account is I say a lot of these plays where he's doing too much, a lot of the negative plays where maybe it's a factor because if he's dealing with immediate pressure, he's dealing with certain play calling, he's dealing with certain situational football, third and long, second and long situations. Those shouldn't exist unless if they're created by himself. And so it's one of those things where you kind of want to filter out a lot of those plays, or at least say, is this play a realistic situation he's going to be in often at the NFL? Right. So if he's not succeeding in those situations, it's not a huge penalty. But also I want to be able to say, like, are these ingraining terrible habits into him too? And so I think that's like the biggest concern is like, is constantly being down, is constantly being beaten, is constantly, getting hit. Are those things that are going to help him or hurt him or not really be a factor? So for him, I think it is a factor in the sense of like a large majority of his plays, almost 40% of his snaps, he was pressured or sacked. Right. So it's a huge amount of his film that's compromised in a way that I don't think will be at the NFL level. So it certainly affects his evaluation. He responded positively to a lot of it, and so that's great. I definitely think we can use that, but I don't want to punish him too much if it's going to be negative, because it's like Josh Allen, going back to him at Wyoming. Like he did not respond positively a lot of the time, and so we saw that didn't matter a ton eventually long term. And so maybe he's the exception. I mean, he is the exception in a lot of ways, Allen, but like it may also be a great learning experience too, to be able to say, let me not completely ding a guy for trying to throw, a couple passes that end up being intercepted, because that situation is just not going to happen in the NFL.
Yeah. So if we go from the offensive line play, I think the common thing might be to say that there's some questionable decision making and whether or not that can kind of move forward. But I mean, the arm talent from what you watch can be completely ridiculous. I find myself thinking he's the best quarterback in this class at one moment, and the other there might be irreparable type things we can't change when he comes to the NFL. So what is the big things that you look for or that you've seen from him that you think are going to translate to the next level?
Yeah, I think, obviously like the arm strength is the first thing that pops out. Like you can't miss it. You can't miss that he's the strongest thrower. You can't miss that he's probably the best rusher that we've had since Lamar Jackson too. So like he's just a completely game-changing playmaker. So the favorite thing that I see about him is just like the ability to make huge plays, the ability to extend plays and create something out of nothing. I think he has pinpoint accuracy on a lot of throws. Like his ball placement is phenomenal a lot of the time. Much more than what I expected, much better than what I expected, as far as consistency too. Like when I went into kind of watching him, because he does have that reputation of like, well, 5 best throws, 5 worst throws. So, but his 5 best throws are completely unguardable. And so I think you're putting him in rare company, because very few quarterbacks can say that. Very few prospects can say that, even over the last decade. And those guys are almost always really good in the NFL. So even with like considering the bad, it's like you do want to bank on the good more often than not.
Right. Is there anything you would say? I mean, I think from film, a lot of people go to, the overthrows, the sailing the football. Like, what are some things that are going to keep him from, I would say, let's say, playing in year one?
I think you see it on like especially intermediate throws where he's loading up and just throwing it as hard as he can. Yeah. And it's strange because he has a lot of examples of using touch. He has a lot of examples of putting arc on his passes, but for some reason he tries to fire in passes on intermediate throws. I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure if that's just like a timing mechanism for him, or if that's just like he's trying to compensate for what's around him. But it's very strange because he doesn't generally do it on short throws. 0 to 10 yards, it's not really an issue. Very few examples. But 11 to 19 yards, we're seeing it a lot. Deep throws, he does have some deep misses. Like, I don't want to criticize a guy too much for that. Like, kind of looking historically, deep passing, it's not a good indicator of NFL success. He's a good deep passer. It's just he has some really glaring bad misses. So I think those are more like mechanical adjustments and maybe more of just practicing and getting more guys that are actually like his talent level, as opposed to a lot slower guys and guys that aren't really as predictable with their breaks, stuff like that. I do think that obviously coming from like a huge freeze offense, a lot of that stuff is one read by nature. A lot of that stuff is not terribly complex. He has some good examples of making progressions, has some really good examples of plays where that doesn't happen, where he's forcing the ball into one throw and it's just going to be that throw or it's no throw at all.
Right.
And he almost always chose to throw the ball, like even if that throw is not there. And so I think for him, it's just being judicious. It's, accounting for the speed of the game. Obviously is going to be huge. He's going to make a lot of mistakes because every rookie does. But I think for him, uniquely to him, it's going to be, why does he always throw that fastball on those intermediate routes,
right.
and sail throws, like you said. Like sometimes that ball is 5 yards behind him, sometimes it's 5 yards ahead of him and way above him. Why does that happen? I think that's going to be a big thing too for cutting down turnovers, and that'll really cut down. It'll really determine his rookie season, right? Like if he doesn't have a lot of those overthrows, that's a lot less turnovers that he'll have. It's probably a pretty successful rookie year. Worst case, he doesn't change that. It's just part of who he is. Then it's kind of like a Cam Newton trajectory, or an early Josh Allen trajectory, where there's going to be a lot of pain throughout those first 2 or 3 years. If he can ever fix it, and then you're just hoping he can make bigger plays to overcome those plays.
Right. 27 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in his senior year. So is there a belief from you that he could play in his first year? I think that's a big conversation point, is if you're drafting Malik Willis, can I put him out on the field in year one, and what are my expectations from him?
Yeah, I would love to play him right away if I can. I'm a big proponent of playing right away. Like, if possible, he's a little bit older. He'll be 23 as a rookie. He's got the experience at Liberty. I think that will help him more than, say, like a guy like Trey Lance, who had very little playing experience. Like, I think he should have sat just because he was super raw. All over, coming from a very protected offense. Willis is not in a protected offense. He was the offense. Yeah. I think that helps a lot more than hurts, right? So I think that can help him, especially in the right situation. The dream was to put him with Sean Payton in New Orleans. Obviously, that won't happen. He will hopefully go to a spot that builds more of an effective supporting cast for him. Rollouts, makes easier plays for him. Just things that you want from any type of versatile, dual playmaking type of quarterback in year one. Like, you don't need to completely dumb it down. You want him to be a playmaker, but at the same time too, you can't overwhelm him just because he is a rookie. I would love to play him year one. If there's not a veteran in place, kind of like San Francisco had, but at the same time, you're going to have those bumps. And I think that you're just hoping for more flashes than bumps, and you're not looking, you want to see like that second half of the year progression, especially. You don't want to see that regression and losing confidence. So if he starts losing confidence from bad plays, then you start to be like, okay, year one is not going as planned.
Right. Now, is there any, you mentioned the Saints, so is there any other team that you think is a really good fit for him, considering that, he might not get to the point where the Saints are?
Yeah, I think Washington makes a lot of sense. I actually think Denver makes a lot of sense too. If those two teams can't get a veteran for some reason, which I would be surprised. I mean, I would think both of them are going to be pretty aggressive going for a veteran. They both have the supporting casts. They both have veteran coaching staffs. Even though Nathaniel Hackett's a first-year head coach, he's coached several different quarterbacks. Right. Obviously, he's worked, with a very friendly offensive scheme in Green Bay. So I think that he's going to be able to put him in successive positions earlier, especially with those receivers, right, in that running game. So Washington more so, probably more of like a defensive first team. Ron Rivera has experience with Cam Newton, so he's going to be able to deal with some of the variance that's going to be coming with Willis, right, as far as his accuracy and just overall decision making. So I'd like to see those two. I would love to see Carolina get him, but I don't like Matt Rule at all. I don't trust him to build an effective offense. nothing that he talks about makes sense for current NFL. So I think that's the team that needs him the most, but not a situation that's necessarily great for him. If they still had Joe Brady, I think it'd be a good spot, but obviously they chose to part ways there.
Yeah. I'm a Chargers fan, so I was really hoping in the early parts that Joe Brady would end up as a head coach with the Chargers, but I like him. I was definitely surprised by that. Before we close things out, I want to mention to you that, I had Liberty plus 9.5 against Ole Miss. I know you're a betting guy as well. I would assume you watched the tape and you saw the play that he made to end the game. I don't know if you remember him running to the sidelines and throwing things right over the middle of the field. That's almost the thing that for me is like a takeaway of, oh my God, what on earth could this guy do if he was on an NFL field with guys that can really play?
Yeah. No, I mean, he's, that was an interesting game. I didn't think he played nearly as badly as what the numbers said.
Yeah.
It just, that team was totally overmatched. So no, I had Ole Miss. I didn't think Liberty was going to be too close. Every couple of years, there's these quarterback prospects at these smaller schools, and we overvalue that fact, and we overlook the fact that like Ole Miss is just like 4 and 5 star talent.
Yeah,
literally
SEC
every
talent,
position.
exactly.
And Liberty's lucky to have one guy like that. So I put my faith in Ole Miss.
Well, yeah, he was going to be in the back door. That's why I said it. But he did with the team. He had the offensive line we mentioned, but he did make some SEC defensive players look silly in that game too. So there's a lot of upside with Malik Willis. No doubt about it. Thanks again, Ian, for joining us. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, let us know what you think in the comments about Malik Willis, and we will see you next time.